Within a functioning democracy such as ours, government should maintain an environment that allows reporters to access important information. But the government must also protect the public from media that misuses or falsifies information. Lately, the government's challenge to allow press freedom whilst attempting to enforce order has been in the spotlight. On the one hand, Minister Twiya is pushing for the Access to Information Bill.
Access to information has never been and shall never be a luxury item, but a basic tenet for the public good.
On the other hand, CRAN, the Communication Regulatory Authority of Namibia, is pushing for what seems to be stringent regulations on many media houses in the form of a broadcast code. With us in studio is Natasha Tibinyane, who represents the ACTION Coalition. Namibia's press freedom is perceived to be under pressure. On the one hand, Namibia's first Access to Information Bill is being drafted by the Ministry of Information. On the other hand, CRAN, the Communications Regulatory Authority of Namibia, is pushing for a broadcast code. This is whilst the media has already put in place several self-regulatory bodies. With us in studio tonight is Natasha Tibinyane, Director of MISA Namibia, representing the ACTION Coalition. Good evening.
Good evening, Alna, and thanks for having us.
Great to see you here in studio. Natasha, tell us about ACTION. Who is ACTION?
ACTION is a coalition, a grouping of media and civil society organizations. The coalition was launched towards the end of 2012, and with that came a campaign, which we called the ACTION campaign. And the main aim of the campaign was to lobby and advocate for an access to information law, but also at the same time to raise awareness around the fact that access to information is a fundamental human right.
Now, there are various stakeholders, MISA Namibia being one of them. Which other organizations or individuals are a part of your coalition?
Yeah, well, we started as MISA Namibia, IPPR, the Institute of Public Policy Research, and Inside Namibia magazine. Those were the three organizations that started it. And that was the secretariat for most of the time, really. And it was only earlier this year that a number of other organizations joined the coalition because, I don't know, 2016 was just a really happening here in terms of access to information. Like, for example, the ACTION Coalition went from 3 to 11 organizations because we felt like we needed more organizations to add voice to our campaign. So we had a strategic planning earlier in the year, and by April we had 11 organizations joining us. And then on the other side, we had the Ministry of ICT doing a lot of work in terms of updating itself on access to information. They started the process of revising the information policy. They worked on a new communication strategy, which is something that we have called for the past couple of years, saying that we need government institutions to have one way of communicating, because one of the biggest problems we've seen in access to information is that there was no guideline. Nobody working in government had a set way of how to communicate on behalf of the government of the Republic.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because obviously the media practitioners feel strongly about access to information, but for the man on the street, the Access to Information Bill, describe to me what are we really talking about here? Access of information, what information, by whom?
Yeah, and that's just the thing, and once we get the law, the hard work is really going to start, because then we have to raise awareness on what is this all about, what is this law all about. Basically, access to information, let's start with the media first. Why is it important to the media? It is important to the media because our job, first and foremost, is to inform and educate the public, to empower them with information, so that they can become critical, active citizens in our democracy. So in order for us to be able to play that role effectively, we need to be able to access information from government, because in the end, government is the biggest stakeholder in our nation as it is. So in order for us to understand what public services are available, in order for us to, as business people, say, I want to start a small business. Eileen Ngula is part of this documentary on ATI for development in Namibia. And what she said, like, for example, as a business person, if she wants to go and start a business in Gibeon, she needs to understand what is the population there. How many of the people in Gibeon can she employ? How many, she needs water to run her factory. Is there water? How much water is available? She needs electricity. Is there? So, for example, before you even start a business, you need so much information because you want your business to be successful, right? You need to ensure that you have all of that information available. So business people need information. Students need information. Ordinary citizens, say, for example, I am a person living with HIV. Where can I go? Which clinic is the best clinic to go for me to get the best treatment? For example, if I need food aid, where do I go to get food aid? If I want to send my child to the best school in the Windhoek district, which school is the best school?
So you're saying essentially that the government maybe does have this data available, but you know, the Access to Information Bill would make this data accessible to everyone.
In some cases, and in many cases, government also doesn't have the data available. We had a panel discussion on the first International Day for Universal Access to Information, and Dani Boysen, the editor of the Republican, said that one of the biggest problems we have is also that we don't know how to manage information. So, for example, you as a researcher at the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, go and does a survey in a village somewhere. You do the survey, you hand it over to your supervisor, maybe in a hard copy form, not in a digital form. Like, what happens to that information, which is actually critical? And where do we store information? And how do we archive it, you know?
Okay, so this would really then set this motion in place to deal with all these issues.
Yeah, this bill looks at how we store information, how we disseminate information. It's really a guideline for us as Namibians to better manage and disseminate information.
And just quickly again to touch on the media practitioners, I mean, myself as a journalist, I know how incredibly hard it is to publish a story if you haven't had official comment.
Yeah.
So would that...
so much credibility.
Yes. So that's really the big thing, I think. Could you explain then the value of this for journalists? Is that something that all journalists struggle with?
A lot of people disagree with me when I say this, but I think in Namibia, what I've seen also is access to information is also, from the media perspective, it's also dependent on the quality of the journalists. You know, it's about the relationships that we build with official sources and unofficial sources. So I've seen so-called controversial journalists quote official sources, you know. So I also think that journalists, we need to try to be the best journalists we can be and uphold professionalism and ethics at all time. But yeah, one of the things we continually say in our annual report on access to information, which is available online at misa.org, where we assess public institutions every year to see how transparent they are. What we've said, I think, in the last year's report is that you provide more credibility to a story as a journalist when you have an official source. But what we find is that some ministers are open to the media. They have a good relationship with the media. They understand the role of the media in our democracy. But most of our political leaders don't understand the role of the media in our democracy. And that's why you will find that some of them sometimes make very unfair thoughts that were not thought through because they are rather ignorant on the role of media in democracy. And they need to, and I always ask them that if we can engage on a platform where they just, I love engaging with politicians because I always use it as an opportunity so that they understand that we need you, you need us. We want a knowledge society. We want Namibia to be a country where people are literate and critically thinking and engaged in our democracy, because we want this amazing Namibia. I'm always so proud when I talk as a Namibian around freedom of expression, because Namibia is very progressive when it comes to freedom of expression. If you compare us to the rest of the world, we're quite progressive. And I feel that we can be this African country that shows the world that, yes, we have all the freedom that we have, but we take our responsibilities very seriously.
Natasha, I'm going to stop you there for an ad break. Ladies and gentlemen, the access to the information bill is a victory for press freedom in our country. But recently, CRAN has proposed a new broadcast code which will have very different implications on press freedom. After the break, we discuss the newly proposed broadcast code with Natasha Tibinyane, Director from MISA Namibia. Namibia has over 40 radio stations and a handful of television broadcasters. If CRAN's proposed broadcast code takes effect, all of these stations will have to adhere to stricter regulations. Regarding content, the code proposes a much-needed local content quota. However, the code also places infringements upon the type of content that may be aired, as well as when and how advertising should be set during programming. With us in studio after the break is Natasha Tibinyane speaking on behalf of the Action Coalition. The Access to Information Bill will improve the transparency and will ensure Namibia's continued status as an African country with enhanced press freedom. The proposed broadcast code, however, has far more complicated implications. Natasha, now let's talk about the broadcast code. Proposed broadcast code. Now, according to the Communications Act, our ministry has the opportunity to, at any time, stand up and call for a broadcast code. First and foremost, do we not have any regulations in place?
We have what is called the self-regulatory system, and the self-regulatory system is one of the most, it is the most preferred system globally. The AU has made it clear in its declaration on freedom of expression in Africa that it is the best system to maintain high standards and media freedom in a country. And Namibia has been a self-regulatory, we followed the self-regulatory model since 2009.
What does that mean exactly, self-regulatory?
Self-regulatory is when it is said that the media self-regulates itself, that's how it's described, but it's actually not like that. Because if you look at the Namibian context, our media ombudsman is a lawyer. A human rights lawyer for that matter. And then the EFN is the Editors Forum of Namibia, which is a group of editors from different media houses, from all sectors of the media, because people always forget that we have different types of media. There's independent media such as One Africa, there's public media such as NBC, and then there's different types of newspapers. So the Editors Forum reflects this diversity of the Namibian media sector. They have nothing to do with the holding the media accountable. That is the media ombudsman's job. But the Editors Forum is sort of a body that engages around issues that affect the media in the country.
Okay, so you're saying when we're talking about self-regulation, this is pretty much to make sure that people aren't slandered, that the information that's carried across in a newspaper is accurate and fair.
The media ombudsman is there to hold those accountable that are that are found to act in an unprofessional and unethical way in the media.
Okay.
So it is that office is responsible for here's the thing that is very important about our system, is that it won't work if members of the public don't engage with the media ombudsman. So if the subsequent One Africa that was said or you saw that you felt was unprofessional, was a lie, yet was told as the truth, you can, for free, whether you can send an email or there are different ways you can engage with the Office of the Media Ombudsman, lay an official complaint. There are different processes. For example, if the Media Ombudsman assesses the case, then he would make a judgment. If one of the parties are not satisfied with the outcome of that, it can go to an appeals committee.
But I mean,
which is a bigger
essentially,
body.
there is a body. There is a place
Yes.
that I can take my complaint about an article to. I can go to the media.
An article or something I heard on the radio,
Yes.
or something I saw online.
All right.
You know, any media platform.
Yes.
The media ombudsman is there to hold those who transgress responsible.
Okay, so now why would we at this stage need a broadcast code?
You need to ask CRAN that question, my dear, because we're also asking them that. And because last year they had this public hearing, and we were like, what? You know, and then we explained that actually, you know, Namibia, we prescribe to the self-regulatory system, and then they raised valid points where there were weaknesses, where they were saying, yeah, but we get complaints like this and we get complaints like that. And then what we did as the Editors Forum and other stakeholders is we went and we looked at our Media Code of Ethics, which was launched in 2009 when we launched this whole self-regulatory system. Then we looked at the Namibian Media Code of Ethics, and we adapted it and we amended it and we included those concerns that they had. Yes. And we have a much better Media Code of Ethics now, thanks to them. And you see, that's why we're saying we need to hold each other accountable.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Okay, so CRAN has come forth with public consultations on this broadcast code.
Again, because they did it last year, and then we went as a media and we improved the situation, which they should say thank you for. But then this year they came again with another public hearing. With
Now, what exactly is in this proposed broadcast code?
The broadcast code is about content. They want 20% local content. They're looking at children. How shall I put this? Because we need to recognize that television, for example, that there are certain things you can't show at certain times because we have vulnerable children online. So they're looking at children, how the media should respond to children. They're looking at how the media should respond when it's election time, like ensuring that all political parties get free and equal access to airtime, stuff like that.
Now, these things seem fair, but there are other aspects that don't seem as fair. For instance, advertising, they're specific.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry, thanks for highlighting that, because I'm not in the commercial media, so I sometimes forget that as well. Exactly. Advertising, what was the thing that they said about, can you tell us what it is about, what they say about advertising? That you must have, they provide they tell you when you must advertise, basically. That's what they're telling you. They give you the times, like after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, you must have an ad break. And here's the thing, what they don't recognize is that commercial media and public media, commercial media independent media depend on advertising.
And they compete with each other.
You cannot have these cameras and these lights if you don't have an advertiser that advertises on you. With NBC, it's a different situation. NBC is funded by the public, so there's always money because we're always paying our tax. So you cannot prescribe to an independent broadcaster. You should not prescribe to an independent broadcaster how it should make its money.
I know MultiChoice was one of the players that said this might deter investment in the broadcast industry.
Oh, my dear, the way MultiChoice, if this broadcasting code is passed, the way MultiChoice will basically have to close down if it has to adhere to all of these rules and regulations that CRAN proposes. But here's the thing. We, as a civil society, we need to sit with CRAN again, because they explained that this issue is part of their strategic plan. And I can understand that a few years ago they sat down and they're like, okay, this is what we want to do, without consultation. But now they realize that it goes against the fundamental principles that we have in Namibia as this media-free country that has an acceptable, effective self-regulatory system. And the nice thing about our system and model is that we recognize that we live in an ever-changing world. So how we regulate ourselves is going to change. And if you look at the proposals that CRAN makes, the new Media Code of Ethics, everything that they propose, most of what they propose, we already deal with in the Code of Ethics. Yeah, because it was so well improved that if you look at the Broadcasting Code of Conduct of CRAN and our Code of Ethics, it almost looks the same, except when it comes to the advertising.
Now, if people think, okay, this newly proposed broadcast code, some might think it's only going to affect NBC, Television, One Africa, and MultiChoice. But really, who will be affected by the broadcast code?
Everybody that has a license to broadcast. So those are radio stations and television stations. Okay. And the issue here is that CRAN, I think there's a lot of, we don't talk to each other sometimes, you know? And I think that, because we've tried, after the public hearing last year, we've really tried to have, as MISA Namibia, meetings with CRAN. We even had a legal overview done and all of these things, you know, but I don't know, sometimes people just don't want to engage, and then we do things that are not in the best interest of the country.
So now, for the media practitioners who are worried about the broadcast code, how do they get involved in these consultations?
Well, the consultations are done, basically. There was that public hearing, the oral one, which was just embarrassing. Then there was where we all had to make written submissions. The deadline was the 20th, which we did. But we have been very busy around this access to information issue the past couple of weeks. So as from next week, we need to focus on the broadcasting code issue again. We need to sit around a table as stakeholders, and we need to talk through the issue. And I can assure you that we're not going to have this broadcasting code. As an activist, I am assuring that's not going to happen.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for your time. It was a very interesting conversation.
Pleasure to be
Viewers, that's unfortunately all from us on One Exclusive tonight. Just remember that this story will be uploaded to the One Africa Television YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page, for you to share with those who might have missed it. Engage with me by SMSing your comments on tonight's story to 555. SMS is charged at $1 Namibian $50. Good night, viewers.